I started street art through a friend of mine. He showed me the website of Banksy. This was way back in maybe 2004, 2005. So really before he really blew up. And I saw that and I was just completely blown away by like the visual impact of a stencil and the sort of, it's a very simple way of telling a story. It's black and white. I was really inspired by this heavy-hitting contrast of his style. And then I just started making my own stencils. And then when I moved to Spain, I started doing it basically every night, going out, doing stencils, and just really manifesting my creativity. So I'd work during the day in a restaurant, and then at night I'd have like a whole different life of vandalism and art. There's definitely a part of me that enjoys outsmarting the system, basically, right? And that's through preparation, scoping it out, practice, really having a game plan to be in and out as fast as possible. That's, I think that definitely adds another layer to it of the enjoyment. Yeah. I like street art because nobody's giving you permission, so at the same token, nobody's holding you back. So it's really a world where you go out and do whatever the hell you want in whatever way, shape that you want. And it's only if you get caught that there's maybe a consequence, but if you're smart, you don't really get caught. So last year, John asked me to do a mural on the backside of the studio. And to me, I've always really appreciated the worth pattern, which has the number 001 in the catalog. And I remember, in those early days, seeing that pattern and being really impressed by, it's kind of this X-ray skull mixed with like a Baroque kind of very ornate kind of frame. It being such a archetypical pattern for Rollout, that made me want to take that pattern and sort of reimagine it as a street art pattern. Basically, the fun part was like, how do I deconstruct all the layers and translate it into something that I want to put on the wall? The ornate Baroque style frame I turned into a huge stamp made out of yoga mat material to create this very comical kind of looking tool. And then the stamping was like a full body experience of like, using my body and everything to really hit the stamp against the wall. And it was an incredibly fun experience. When I was spraying these skulls, I tried to emulate the kind of X-ray feel of that the digital pattern has. And my way of doing that was just to really spray them like hard on one side and then kind of fade them out on the other side. And that was just an in the moment kind of thing that I decided to do. And it really gave the skulls this incredible 3D feel. But that was just like in the moment from, all the experience that I have in spraying just out on the street. I was like, okay, if I do this, it's gonna come out nice. Yeah, it's just a reinterpretation of a classic pattern into like a street art kind of way. And it's a beautiful mural, and we also play basketball here. My name is Geert. I'm a street artist turned creative, doing anything for money. Yeah, and I'm based in Amsterdam. My name is Geert Decock. I'm a street artist turned product designer turned graphic designer. Basically, when I have an idea, I immediately associate a feeling to it or a vibe that I think people will feel. And if that is like, if that sounds interesting, then I try to match that feeling in the end. So for me, a design is successful when I get that validation in the end that people feel what I thought that they would feel. So this is Bliss. The inspiration was basically this beautiful sunlit day near a pool. I was just looking at the water just dancing and the sun refracting in it, and it was just like a beautiful moment. So I took a photo with my phone, and then I thought of an interesting way of sort of creating a rich pattern by printing it out on a receipt printer, the photo of the pool in black and white. That's what all these dots are, is basically the little heat elements of that printer, changing the thermal paper, which I then scanned in, made a full repeat of it, so it can go on forever. And the result is something that invokes this tranquility of moving water. And then if you come closer, it's this intricate soft dot pattern. So beat and repeat, I did when I moved to Canada. This was 2007. Yeah, it's one of my earlier works on canvas, and then Rollout turned it into a wallpaper. I think I held off on designing wallpaper for many years because I hadn't figured out or taken the time to figure out what wallpaper design would mean something to me. So, because basically anything can be wallpaper. And that's sort of then the issue of, well, what kind of wallpaper am I gonna produce that is important to me? And maybe after a month of experimenting, that's when it really kind of hit me like, oh, I'm very inspired by the process of coming up with an interesting process. And then from there, make designs within that process. So every time, every wallpaper, I try to create a different process, which, you know, is sort of like a discovery, inventive moment. And when that makes me happy, then I produce wallpaper from that idea. So Camofoil was one of my earliest designs that I made, where I was able to really make something click. And the idea was to create a new kind of camouflage pattern. So I created a pattern that combines classic camouflage with tin foil that I photographed. So it creates something that is way more alive than a regular camouflage would be. And yeah, it creates a lot of depth and life to it. Yeah, so here's a new design of mine that I recently developed called Birch Please. Basically, what I wanted to create was a wallpaper that was very comforting and natural looking while still being very stylized. And the end result is something that looks very cozy and yet looks very high-end, very designed, but it's all natural stuff on display. And also because it's birch, you kind of already imagine it being very papery and thin. So Bananarama is basically like a retro-inspired tiki 1950s Hawaiian style pattern. I started by drawing out different leaves in different kind of styles, and then ended up, you know, coming up with like a tropical kind of vibe that worked, turning that into a stencil that I then sprayed directly onto the wall, which we then photographed and then turned into a wallpaper. So it's basically a stencil repeat that got turned into a wallpaper. So the benefit of doing the stencils straight onto the wall using like half corrugated cardboard is that you kind of get the underspray of the corrugated cardboard, which is on the wall. It creates this very analog feel that you wouldn't be able to do digitally, or yeah, you would have to fake it real hard. So it's a very, the design feels very warm because you can see that it's made by hand basically. So Ghostwood came from this kind of want for myself to have a more of a subtle wallpaper. So it's still, it looks, you know, it looks handcrafted, and it creates an atmosphere of warmth because it's like all wooden planks basically. And there's two versions. There's one that has like a warm brown tint to it, and the other one is like a bleached black and white version. So you have a lot of variety to create a space that feels handmade, but it's like very modern or very warm and classic. So Spradient came from a brief for a very large gym, and they wanted a gradient, but I tried to make a gradient that's a bit more alive and has, even though it's very flat, if you come close to it, it's actually has a ton of detail, because I spray like maybe 50 gradients on paper and then scan them in and then even combine them to get like different kind of paint splatters and details in there. So from afar it looks like a gradient, but the closer you get, the more details that you see. So this new design, Tropic Thunder, came from this idea to create something that is high-end and rich, but also very soothing and calm, yet very modern. So I created 3 types of forests. Created a pine forest, a tropical forest, and a bamboo forest that I then digitized using like a pointillism effect. And yeah, the result is like a wallpaper that looks kind of vintage, but because of the use of the gradient, it looks very modern. Yet, it also kind of looks like the earlier black and white photos that people would color in. Those were like fake colors, but your brain tricks you into thinking it's all full color. So the same with this design. It's a gradient right now that goes from blue to green, and yet your brain thinks it's like way more detailed than it actually is. I often walk into spaces and think, oh, this can look a hell of a lot better with some Rollout wallpaper.
That was very natural. Thank you.